I wanted to just spend one more BBC sharing a little bit about my winter retreat at Land of Calm Abiding, which was a purification retreat. And it was coinciding with the Sravasti Abbey Vajrasattva winter retreat, which is also a purification retreat. And what I wanted to do, because we just came out of doing this deep cleaning at Gotami House, it's one of our beautiful residences that we did a really deep clean on. And I think it's a really good analogy on how purification helps to really take care of our minds. And I think generally, we daily here at least, we do sort of a general cleaning of our minds with the 35 Buddha practice, the 7-limb prayer. Some folks have got Vajrasattva practice as their main practice, the 8 Mahayana precepts. So it's like a quick sweep and a dust rag, getting the obvious stuff out, kind of keeping ahead of the game, making sure that we're keeping ahead of our gross afflictions that pretty much are anybody can see from across the room. I mean, they're the big ones that just get in the way of just our daily peace and harmony. But at a deeper level, it's really crucial that we do a deep clean of our minds, like we do a deep clean every once in a while where we live. There is stuff in our minds like the closets or the drawers that we haven't looked at for years, or the dust bunnies that hide out of sight. We've got maroon dust bunnies here, by the way, at the Abbey, and they're quite large, and they are very elusive when you try to sweep them up. And the toilets and the showers need a lot of elbow grease. This is the experience we had this morning. So our afflictions, especially the very habituated mind states, are like that. They're kind of grimy, they're kind of calcified, a little bit embedded, a little bit moldy, they're hiding things that we just don't really want to deal with, or we don't even have access to. But since we want our hearts and minds to shine out into the world, there's nothing really better than doing purification practice, especially if you get the opportunity to do it over like a retreat where you really get to go deep. You get to go deep and uncover and work with these really tough mental states because you have the time, you have the focus, you have the environment to be able to do it. Sometimes even at the monastery here, we keep our practice up, but be able to take the time to go really, really deeply into our minds. And that it makes a huge difference in how much change we can see internally and how much impact the Dharma really does have on our minds. We can really give ourselves the gift of this type of experience. So this winter when I did my solitary retreat, I had a motivation to do a deep purification, addressing some of my old mental habits. They had been running for, we're talking 64 years here. And I was committed to going deeper inside my mind and figuring out how my mind thinks and what it thinks that drives my actions, either towards befriending myself in a virtuous way or at times really betraying myself in a very non-virtuous, destructive way. And to purify these habits, the ones that I tend to default to, even without thinking when my buttons get pushed or difficult situations come up in my life, I have some very specific emotional mental habits, states of mind that get triggered. They're almost like automatic. Certain situations, certain ways that I'm feeling, maybe physically, they just kind of kick in. So what I wanted to really do was to identify them. I wanted to see the suffering that they cause, wanted to purify them and make a really strong determination to make some other choices, some better choices, but to be able to figure out what they are, because they're so automatic for me, so habituated. And a default, when I get afraid or I get angry or I get confused, they're right there. And one of the things that I had to admit to myself this winter is that I can be pretty vague, sometimes lackadaisical about my mind, what's going on in there. It's like everyday room cleaning, Yeah, I get angry. Yeah, I'm lazy. Yeah, I have some attachment. I mean, there's a little bit of sometimes because we do it all the time, I know that I get a little lazy about it. I get a little lackadaisical. I don't really think, well, hello, are you seeing these afflictions? Are you going to do something about them sooner than later, like now? So the retreat gave an opportunity to see that I've got to pay much more attention to some of these deeper habits. So one of my resources was Practical Ethics and Profound Emptiness, a beautiful commentary on Nagarjuna's Precious Garland by Kensur Jampa Tegchuk that Venerable Chodron had edited and was released in 2016. And when Venerable taught this text, I remembered very specifically when we got to I think it was Section 5 was on the practices of bodhisattvas, and she kind of unpacked the 57 non-virtuous mental factors. I remembered that in the middle of this retreat, and I had it on my computer, and I really wanted to unpack that a little bit more. And in the beginning of that chapter, Khensur Jampa Tekchuk says, to be fit to engage in the bodhisattva practice, we need to reduce our afflictions and misguided behavior as much as possible. For this reason, Nagarjuna points out the 57 defects in attitude and behavior that we need to diminish as much as possible now and eventually to forsake altogether. So he says, while you read about these 67 faults in the ensuing verses, examine your mind and behavior and make as many examples of when and how these faults manifest in you. Then contemplate the various antidotes to them so that when they arise, you can apply them and thus prevent these faults from taking control of your mind. So that's the instruction I took on a number of weeks in my solitary retreat. I took each one of those. I looked at it in my life, what kind of experiences, what kind of situations trigger these kind of deep mental habits. Because they're not just, oh, I got angry, I got lazy, I got proud. They have very specific descriptions to them, so you can really get more clear about what's driving a lot of destructive actions. And the beauty of doing a retreat is that you have a time to unpack the Dharma in a very deep way and to clean things up. So what I did is I went through all of the 57 non-virtuous mental factors, and I pulled a number of them out just to kind of go through some of the descriptions of them and to see how clear Khensur Jampa Tekchuk was to describe how to look at these. And as Venerable, when she taught it, she said, look at how they play themselves out in your life, the suffering that they cause, and how to counteract them. So the two of them that I really have taken quite to heart, because they kind of coincide with the first BBC I did, where I talked a lot about integrity and consideration for others. So number 9 in these 57 is non-integrity, which means to not refrain from bad behavior. We have lost all of our self-respect. We knowingly transgress our precepts when no one else is around, without caring about it or having the sense of self-respect. So this is where we're breaking our precepts, not following the guidelines to the Abbey when nobody else is around. So it's not when we're out there, we're putting on a good show. This is where we're sliding around and just disregarding, caring for our minds when we're by ourselves. The great masters reminded that since the Buddha's knowledge encompasses all phenomena, they are aware of our actions. So to really think, if we think that the Buddha is watching us, even if we're not in community, if we're in our rooms by ourselves, we're out in the world, knowing that the Buddha is caring and watching everything that we do really helps to prevent us from recklessly thinking that we can do whatever we like as long as nobody knows. And I see this particular non-virtuous mental factor as betraying ourselves. You know, the whole idea about making friends, when we don't hold our integrity and we do this kind of sneaking around, we really are betraying our good hearts, really betraying our own aspirations. Especially when no one is looking, we don't care that it impacts our mind negatively. It may not be impacting anybody else, but it's impacting our own. Then its friend is in consideration of others, which refers to not refraining from bad behavior because we don't care about the impact that it has on other people. Behaving in a careless, harmful way in front of our friends, our colleagues, our families, and even our spiritual mentors, and not caring about the impact, the effect it has on them, and how they view our conduct. So this I would call, personally, I call it betraying others. We know that what we're doing has an impact, but because we're under the control of whichever affliction, could be pride, could be jealousy, could be confusion, could be attachment, could be anger, we don't care. You know, we don't care whether we impact people in a negative way. Then there's a few here that I took to heart because I know I have them. Number 21 is called carping. Constantly talking about others' mistakes, reminding them of their errors, and in fact discussing them with others as well. It actually has a term, and it's called carping. We call it nagging, but Khensur Jampa Tekchuk or Nagarjuna called it carping. If you want to poison the harmony of a group or send bad vibes, this is it. This is a really horrible mental habit. The next one is stupefaction. refers to being irritated, unable to think clearly, and feeling overwhelmed. And the source of this is when you're not feeling well or your mind's just in a general state of dissatisfaction. So you've got a little bit of anger going on, you've got a little bit of confusion, and maybe a little bit of fear all rolled into one because you're just not thinking clearly, you're short-fused, and you're almost ready to say, I'm going to go to bed. See you later. So this is called stupefaction. And I'll go to the last two here. Number 45 is erratic displeasure that can really run under the surface in the mind, that we are constantly unaware of this. This is a real subtle one. And it means that sometimes we dislike somebody or something, and sometimes we like the same thing. All right, so one day we like each other, the next day we've got an issue. We like something, next day. This is an impulsive and fickle mind. This is the mind that gets us really confused, changes like the weather, and it's kind of crazy making. And then the last one I wanted to share is number 48. It's called affect. I think this is one that I find for myself, I think it kicks in when I have some attachment going on to praise and approval. So this is when we're attached to someone or something, an outcome. If we have some sort of investment in something turning out the way we want, our physical appearance and behavior, as well as the tone of our voice and what we say, changes from what it normally is. Like we put on this totally different face, whether it's because our teachers are here, whether our friends are here, our family's here, our big supporters are here, or somebody we might be attached to. We go through this whole sort of what is that? A chameleon kind of change. And this is totally bogus behavior. So those are some of them that I kind of discovered in my own practice. I went through them out of these 57, that these are things that I have seen in my own behavior. So with mindfulness, maintain an awareness of our precepts and values. With introspective awareness, monitor which of these mental states arises in our mind and swiftly apply a Dharma antidote when needed, with a conscientiousness that really cherishes ethical conduct. So this is kind of what Khenpo Jampa Tekchok sort of summarizes all 57 of those. And what I found also in the retreat, that as I continue to look at the more habituated mental states, instead of feeling hopeless, instead of feeling overwhelmed, I really felt quite like deep cleaning your room. Like once we walked away out of the mechanical room, it was like, oh my gosh, look at this place. It looks incredible. So when we start working on eradicating these more habituated mental habits, we get to feel really empowered, that we're finally getting more serious about dealing with these afflicted, very habituated mental states by naming them, owning them, purifying them, and then making some other choices. We're catching them sooner. So it's a really empowering, it's about understanding one's mind very, very clearly, and then you know what to purify. And I've seen some slight changes in my behavior because I thought about these things while I was on retreat. And that, if I can say that the time in retreat, purifying my mind and finding that I can clean house for not only my own satisfaction and my own peace of mind, but I can give more space to let others take care of their own internal dwellings. Not trying to fix people, not trying to insist that people change under my rules. It really helps me to just kind of mind my own place. And having a bright and wise heart, then, if I work on my own, I can reflect that back to others and really inspire their own brightness. People sense that. And as Venerable Kunga said yesterday, this whole idea about respecting and honoring ourselves is so important. And we become a mirror, not only for ourselves, but for the world. And so deep cleaning the inside, that internal abode, I think is a really good practice. And retreat offers that in a deep way, but even just doing purification every day is just absolutely wonderful to keep our internal abodes bright and shiny.